How we doing?
How we doing?
We're good. How you doing?
So, doing well.
What have you been doing since we last saw you after the NIT game?
A lot of golfing. I've been doing a lot of that. A lot of deep reflection, thinking about the way the world works, all that deep stuff. No, I got a good time and enjoy time with family off for a little while, but I'm excited to be back, ready to get my last season going.
Are you a White Sox guy?
I am a White Sox guy.
So you and the Pope?
And me and the Pope were close. He texted me. He was telling me, I'm going to be the next Pope before everybody even knew. So I was the first one to find out.
So what do you look forward to getting out of these summer workouts?
Just getting back to that team environment, getting to know new guys. We got a lot of new guys on the team. And so just getting on the court, competing, building this chemistry, getting ready for, this upcoming season. Just really looking forward to, like I said, spending time with the guys.
No Gibson, no Isaiah. I'm sure you already had somewhat of a leadership role. How much more do you take on this year going into your senior season?
I think it's not only just me, but a couple of the other returners, guys that have gotten time on the court. I think we all, taking the leadership role of, showing the new guys, what it looks like, because we have, I got 3 years under my belt, but, the other guys got a year under their belt of, Shirt's system and what he expects. And so, I think it's just all of us trying to, help guys as best as possible, because if we're going to be at our best, we're going to need everybody to get it early.
Were you eager to get back out there after the season ended, or did you want the time away?
I definitely enjoyed my time away. I'll say that. Obviously, I'm super excited now to, continue on, get this season rolling. But, I think when we get those times, you don't get much time, away during, college. It's pretty much a 10-month season. And so, when you do get those times, those, 3-4 week breaks, you definitely enjoy them.
You've got 10 new teammates this year. Last year you had like 11 or 10, and then from the team before that in Indiana State, you probably had like 30 different teammates in 3 years. Is that weird? Is it that? How difficult is it, or to adjust to all these different?
Yeah, no, it's definitely different, because you're not used to the guy next to you for all 4 years. You come in with, maybe, 2 or 3 guys that you may be able to stick out, all 4 years. My case wasn't the same. I've been with Jaden, the most. Me and Jaden's been together for 4 years. And so, it's just been me and him, ride or die. But, just getting used to new teammates is always, I think it's fun. Getting to see what guys are, what they look like on the court, what they look like off the court, how you guys gel, and, stuff like that. And so, you're just creating relationships. And I think Shirts is big on, recruiting the right guys, good character guys. And so, I loved all my teammates I played with so far. And, I don't think it's going to be anything different now this year.
As big a cog as you are in the offense, I would imagine that getting to know their individual tendencies in the summer is a big part of what you're going to get out of this, about, where guys are going to be in certain situations, or what, how they react to certain things.
Yeah, no, it's going to be huge for us to kind of understand how we, each of us play. Obviously Shirts is going to do all the, schemes and, putting us in right spots. But I think it's big for, us individually to know, what each other's strengths are, because that'll help us out on the court. And like I said, just, being able to read, knowing what Trey's going to do, knowing what Quentin's going to do, knowing what Amari's going to do. And, I think it just helps me out, as long as it's helping them out with knowing what I'm going to do as well.
Swope knew where to get you the ball for where you wanted it for shooting. So do you have to work with Trey on that?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I got to play with Swope for 2 years, and so, we got comfortable with each other, knowing what we were going to do, and that helps. And so, like I said, it's just going to, take this summer to kind of get that chemistry flowing, understanding, what we like and what we don't like. And so, I think that's what the summer's all about.
What was your biggest takeaway from your first season here, playing in the conference and everything, with the different environment and all that?
I think the biggest thing was the physicality, I think, of the league was, from, guards to bigs were, a little bit better than, or a little bit bigger than what it was in the MVC. And so it took an adjustment to, just get that from the beginning of the season. But even until, the end of the season, I was still learning. And I think now that I've gotten a year under my belt, I know what to expect. We all know what to expect that, played in this league. And so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun for year 2.
Did you look at this? Oh, I was going to say, did you look at this first year as in any way as sort of like a measuring stick as far as like how you matched up and that sort of thing? Like you talked about the physicality. I mean, like, did you look at this as, okay, how do I stack up against some of these guys?
I think it brought some adversity, and so I think we learn off of that adversity. I think you don't go into the year, hoping to, try and find a challenge. Obviously you want to be able to dominate everywhere you go, but, it's not going to be possible every time, and so, like I said, when I met my hardships, when I met the adversity, throughout the season, I was able to learn through it and kind of get through that. And so, it's going to be the same way this season. This season's going to bring new different challenges than, last season was, even though it is the same league, but it's going to be different players, and, I'm going to get different schemes thrown at me. And so, I just take every year, trying to go out there and play the best I can, and then just learn from the mistakes, learn from the good stuff, and, ultimately try and be my best at the end.
I know every team's different, every season's different. I also realize you're only 4 days into this team, but who is this team so far? What have you realized about who these guys are and what you guys are?
I think that we got a lot of energy. I've loved the energy so far throughout these first 4 days. We got a lot of good character guys, and then we got a lot of high IQ ball players. I think, guys are, smart out here, knowing what to do. I think we're picking up Schertz's, his offense is, very hard to, to learn, and it's going to take a long time, and we're by no far, anywhere near, even getting to the, probably like 5% of knowing what to do out there, maybe even 3%. And so, it's going to take a long time, but I think guys are, picking up, a little bit of it, quick, and, we're just going to continue to build off of it.
What do you personally want to get out of your senior season?
Hopefully some championships. I think that's the ultimate goal. I think if you're not striving for a national championship, you shouldn't be out here, because if you're not reaching for the ultimate best, you're going to settle yourself short. And so we're looking to come for, any championship that we could win.
What have you learned about Trey?
Trey's a cool guy, he's bad music taste. He's not as athletic as me. It's kind of, he reminds me of Swope a little bit, in the athleticism part. I'm quicker, I'm stronger, I can jump higher, but, he's a great guy. I'm looking forward to, being able to play with him this year.
How'd you do in the combine yesterday?
I think I was top of everything. They told me not to, put my numbers out there, but I think I was at the top of everything.
Yeah, vertical leap was
Vertical,
increased.
three-quarter sprint, all that stuff. I think I benched 185 for like 67. I think that was like a record or something like that. But I think I was at the top of everything. All good.
Trying to, getting your body right, in this, for next season,
Mm-hmm.
and however you look at that. Have you felt any changes from work you've done so far, or is that just more of a long-term process?
Yeah, no, obviously it's going to be a long-term process, but in the short-term aspect, I've definitely seen some changes. I feel like I'm moving a little bit better laterally. I'm not jumping higher, unfortunately, but I think I am seeing some of these small changes, with what I'm doing off the court. And like I said, it's going to be a long-term thing. Hopefully, I'll be able to continue with it, going into the season.
Is that the motivation for that, just like to get better, or is there anything like in terms of like the competition that you saw? You said, okay, I need to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Or?
I mean, I think it's just my personal, in order for me to be at the top of my game, I think that's the biggest thing I need to work on. I can obviously, be able to dribble better, shoot better, that. But, as far as my, basketball skills, they're going to be where it's at. And so I think the biggest change I can make is with my body and trying to get that right the most. All good. Thank you guys very much. Yep.